Welcome to Connecting to Admired Leadership, where twice a month we explore the behaviors and routines that make great leaders extraordinary. I'm Wes Bender, and I have the distinct pleasure of hosting some of our firm's partners, coaches, and clients to discuss leadership in ways you won't hear anywhere else. Let's dive into this episode and make people and situations better together.
You're wearing the swag today. What's with
I
this?
am wearing extra swag today. You're gonna find out, John, as will all of
Okay.
our folks who are dropping in right now. I've been storing this particular vest up for this particular webinar that we're having.
Okay. Is
So
this
we've
the best webinar? I could throw mine on.
well, part of it I chose a vest because I know you love a good vest.
I do.
So
I do. I do.
let's go ahead and get started. I am enthused to have John with us today. Back, we're going to be discussing feedback and specifically what to be aware of when feedback is absent. Sophie, if you would drop the field note that we're going to be working from today. In the absence of feedback, the most experienced people presume the negative. And Sophie has dropped that in there. If you're not a field notes reader, would love for you to become one of the almost 100,000 people from 182 different countries who are reading these field notes every single day. Also, love to know who is in our live audience. We know many of you listen to these recordings and you also register in order to get the Alex recap. So, our AI executive coach always recaps the conversation and leaves us with some great bullets along the way. But would love to know who's from our listening audience here. And what I've learned is I love to find out, kind of instigate a spectrum for all of our listening audience. So today's spectrum is this: if you would drop, who you are, where you're from, but also where do you err on one side or the other? Do you receive too much feedback, or you feel like you get too much feedback right now? Or do you get too little feedback, or are you right in the middle? It's always nice to have just a little spectrum related to our topic that we can hear from everyone. So, many of us have benefited from the wisdom, insights, practical learnings that John has shared with us in the past. A couple different webinars have come to mind that he's been on: Cracking the Code on Talent, how the best leaders inspire and motivate others. And for those of you who don't know John, could you just quickly tell us who you are and what are you currently loving about what you do? Who are you? What are you currently enjoying about what you do?
I am a father of five. Excuse me. Oh my gosh. Just off a red eye. Apologies. I'm a father of four. I do not have an additional child. I am an avid fly
Are you
fisherman.
telling us
I
something? Is this like
no,
news?
no,
Oh.
no. I'm sleep deprived at the moment. Um, Father of four, most importantly, and an executive coach. It's my privilege to work with senior leaders, coaching, the C-suite, as well as merging and developing leaders in more programmatic stuff. And what's most exciting about this role now, as our firm is growing and scaling, is the opportunity not only to help leaders, but to help coaches that have joined the firm, and to see them grow their practices and see them help other people. So that's exciting.
That's awesome. That actually leads right into one thing I thought about that I appreciate, John, that I wrote down, wanted to articulate on the webinar today is regardless of his level of influence in the conversation, the team meeting, or dialogue session, which is typically pretty high. You heard some of the things that he does, and of course, ramping up some of our new coaches to our firm as well. John always looking to learn and always craving feedback, regardless of the influence he always has. I remember oftentimes getting off a webinar like this or sessions with you, John, where you'll say, "Hey, how can we make this better?" Or "Where did we miss here along the
What do we
way?"
need
And
more of?
that desire and value for feedback makes all the people and situations that you're in, John, extremely fun. So just appreciative of you. And of course, we've just got a great person today to talk about feedback with. So this field note kicks off with legendary women's basketball coach, Pat Summitt.
Ah,
So if you're listening to the recording now, you probably don't see, but I'm wearing a Tennessee Vols bright orange vest in honor of the late great Pat Summitt, coach of the Tennessee Volunteer Lady Vols. 1,098 career wins, most in college basketball history at the time of her retirement. And for those that don't know, yes, I did grow up in the promised land of Knoxville, Tennessee for a good while. And my accent will actually probably go deeper now that we're talking about it as we go through. When I'm not in purple, I can be found in that gaudy orange, as Sandra Bullock describes it in The Blind Side, for those of you that know that reference as well. So just wanted to go on record and say, go Big Orange and Vols for life. And I know we have Christine, who's from Tennessee, on the call. So no coincidence that you're on the call today, Christine, by any stretch of the imagination. So with that said, that was very important to take some time to be able to shout out my Tennessee Vols for the first time on a webinar. But John, would you kind of speak to this idea and frame our minds around what Pat Summitt says is people fill in the blanks with negative. So in the absence of feedback, there is negativity that's often put in there. Frame our minds around that. Give us a little idea how we should be thinking about this.
Well, here's how I think about it. I think Pat Summitt, first of all, was an incredible coach and an incredible leader. And what we know for sure about leaders who have extremely high standards, for leaders who demand the best from others, is that they also tend to be praise stingy. Because that desire for excellence is so high, there's a whole lot of things that are just expected, and when those expected things are done well, I don't need to say anything. And the point we're trying to make here is that that's not exactly kosher. That's not exactly helpful. But you know, the powerful thing for those leaders who do tend to be praise stingy, when they do give feedback, when they do weigh in, guess what? It lands with some real power. It lands with some real meaning. So we're often coaching those types of folks to do it with more frequency.
That's good. So we will be happy to take questions, thoughts, considerations in the chat box or Q&A throughout our time. We had a great a group of pre-submitted questions, so good that I want to jump straight into those for us. And the questions we got ahead of time really build nicely from some questions around personal challenge of seeking feedback in difficult environments, to navigating the risks involved with asking for feedback, to leading others who need feedback, and finally, how do you integrate feedback in creating systemic change across the board? And obviously, we won't be able to get into all of that today, but let's start with this one that's really centered around seeking feedback in difficult environments. How do you ask for feedback when it's not encouraged? What are tactful and effective methods for requesting feedback when none is provided regularly? If I'm a person who needs more feedback, I've dropped it in the chat box perhaps already on this webinar. How do I go about that?
Well, I think it's really important that you contain the question. The last thing you want to do is to go to folks and say, hey, give me some feedback. You got to be much, much more specific. There's, even in a culture that isn't necessarily feedback forward or feedback heavy, let's just say the feedback density is quite low. There's always people around you who see you in action, who have a chance to experience your leadership day to day. And you want to go to those people and be extremely specific. Hey, I'm trying to get better at being more concise, being more pointed, especially when I make a persuasive case in front of senior leaders. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to speak with more confidence. I'm trying to work, I'm just making this up. I'm trying to work on my speech rate to project that confidence. When you see me doing that well, I'd like to know. When you see me doing that not so well, I'd also like to know. We like to say that leadership is a contact sport. There is feedback all around you. There's feedback in the room if you're open to it. But the way that we get feedback out of a difficult environment is to wrap your arm around somebody that knows you well and that presumably you trust, even if you don't trust them, If you go to them specifically and say, hey, your point of view matters to me. I care about your opinion. I'm trying to get better at this one little thing. When you see me doing it well, let me know.
Hmm. So I want you to articulate. I'm gonna put you a little bit on the spot, and hopefully this will be easy for you to recall in your mind. But we have a a pretty nice frame as it relates to feedback, where you've got a 2 by 2 grid,
Sure.
utility, how utility on one
Axis.
axis, and then on the other axis is whether it's positive or negative.
Yep.
We often use that to talk about how we're giving others feedback, but I think it would be neat to fill that out because it could
Sure.
also be used as far as how we're asking for feedback too.
Yeah. So let's look at utility or usefulness on one axis,
Hmm.
and the expectation of whether or not that feedback is going to be positive or negative on the other axis.
That's good.
We borrow a term from chemistry called valence. That's the degree to
Yep.
which it is positively or negatively charged.
Oof, I just
So
got, anybody else get a cringe from talking chemistry? I did from back in the day. But yeah, valence
so
and
so it's
utility.
but let's just call it expectation versus is it useful.
There you go.
So if I receive the feedback in a positive way, the valence is a plus.
Hmm.
But it's not very useful. We would call that praise, flattery.
Hmm.
If if I receive the feedback in more of a negative way, it's got some sting, but it's actually useful. We would call that constructive criticism. If
Hmm.
it lands in a negative way and it's not useful, it's an insult. And by the way, we now know through neuroscience that the same part of our brain lights up when we smell a skunk or we have a fight or flight response as when we're insulted.
Hmm.
So, by all means, when delivering feedback, we want to stay out of the insult bucket.
Yep.
But the holy grail is the feedback is received in a positive way, and it also
Hmm.
has some usefulness. It's
Yeah.
actionable. I can do something with it in the future.
Yeah.
And so that's actually positive feedback. What we see leaders, what we see admired leaders doing is knowing full well that delivering feedback is not the easiest thing in the world to do.
Hmm.
They're going to do everything in their power to stay out of the insult bucket while aiming for received well, has usefulness, has
Yep.
something actionable I can do.
Yep.
Occasionally, we may veer into praise or flattery. Occasionally, we may veer into more so called constructive criticism. But the goal is always to that upper right hand quadrant.
Yeah, and I wonder, I mean, I don't know that we'd be able to come up with it top of mind, but if I wonder if there are questions when we're asking for feedback, if we're not getting it, that help encourage our leaders or those we would seek feedback from to deliver it in that bucket that has positive valence, as you would say, and high utility at the same time. If we just ask for feedback, could you give me some feedback? Like you were saying, very generally, that
Yeah.
opens up to all those other 3 buckets that are there.
Well, think about if you're on the receiving end of that request. Like, hey, Wes, give me some feedback.
Hmm.
Like, nobody wants to step into that ditch.
Yeah.
It's fraught with too much challenge.
The
But
most
if
admired leaders are probably going to ask some curiosity questions before they even give feedback if you're going to them.
exactly, they're essentially going to let other people talk first.
Yep.
And that's how you solve for this valence problem.
Hmm.
If you don't know how your message is going to be received, if you're worried about how the audience may take it, you got to get a sense for how they're thinking about the problem first. You got to understand the gap between their perception of the issue and your perception of the issue. I had a great example of this 2 weeks ago in New York, where I was talking to a bunch of traders at a decent sized hedge fund, and they, managing traders and managing that dynamic, keeping them relatively confident and convicted is a real management challenge. Keep in
Mm.
mind that a good trader needs to be right like 53 out of 100 times. That's a good trader. That means there's 47 mistakes, right? So you got to keep them confident. And so they always ask the trader first, tell me about that. How do you think that trade went? Why? Do you still believe in your conviction? Because they don't want to fly in there, and the manager doesn't want to fly in there and ruin confidence, ruin conviction. They want to understand how they're thinking about it first so that they can help reframe it if necessary.
Yeah, that's good. Let's jump into this question around leading high performers, because we certainly there's certainly a whole nother uh, uh, skill set around leadership to lead very high performing folks. So this one says, when you're leading people whose expertise sometimes exceeds your own in specific areas, how do you maintain your role as their developmental leader while identifying growth opportunities that aren't immediately visible to them? So how do I give feedback to somebody that may be better than me at the end result of what we do?
Two things come to mind, Wes. First of all, I think you want to think about it in terms of developmental experiences.
Hmm.
You don't need to know their role well or have expertise in that domain in order to make sure that that person is getting exposed to the right folks, to make sure that that person is getting stretch opportunities to get better.
Yeah.
Think of it as what is the library of experiences, so to speak, that I could pull off the shelf and give to this person to help accelerate their development? That's
Hmm.
number one. Number two, you may never, ever understand that role or develop that expertise. And in fact, I would argue it's probably not your job to know that role as well as the
Right.
person who knows it better than you. But what you can do is understand what's getting in their way,
Yeah.
understand their constraints, understand their roadblocks, and that should take a matter of weeks, uh, if not days.
Yeah.
And that will enable you to stay more credible with them. Your ability to remove some of those things could be helpful. Um, that's how I think about it.
So I was talking to, I'm going to bring a real life case study that just came to mind into play. I was talking to a potential client last week of a large global, they are kind of in the manufacturing industry. He is a very more senior leader in the accounting space of their business and has done an exceptional job and is just a phenomenal accountant. I've actually been in an escape room with him in the past, and he knows number anything that if you've been in an escape room, any equation that comes up or anything you have to do to numbers, he literally just knows it right off the top. And they've got a new initiative around, of course, a lot of industries have around cybersecurity. And so they've asked him to move from that space of accounting where he knows everything into the
Yeah.
space of cybersecurity and lead a new team there. He's been in that position for about 2 or 3 months, and he says, I've just never led a group where I don't know everything. I don't know everything that needs to be done. And it's a whole nother level of leadership he's never had experience before. How would we coach that individual going into that position, all of a sudden discovering I don't know near as much as the people I'm leading. How do I navigate this? What's the first, second, third thing that they need to be doing?
It's still no different from leading anywhere. Yeah, you're not a domain expert anymore, but guess what? We still have goals. We still have KPIs.
Hmm.
Ideally, you still have values, and ideally, the third thing would be you're doing everything you can to create a high functioning, high performing team. Those are all leadership challenges, leadership things that have nothing to do with the domain.
Yeah.
We know, Wes, that the best teams are actually more player led than leader led.
Hmm.
So, are you putting the right talent on that team? Are you creating clarity around their roles and how they interact? And ultimately, showing them the direction, the North Star that they need to attain. Um, you know, there's countless examples of this. of leaders who switch industries, who know nothing about the, what one of the most famous ones is Lou Gerstner, who went from selling cookies to selling computers, went from RJR Nabisco to IBM. I mean,
Yep.
how do you do that? It's still leadership.
Yeah. And we talk, those of you who've been on these webinars for a while, or those who might be new, the foundational work or space that we play in with leadership is working with universal best practices, universal behaviors of leadership that work in parenting just like they do in the workspace. They work in the dining room table just like they work in the boardroom. They work at all levels of a company, and they work in every psychographic, so every personality that's out there, work in every demographic, and work across every industry that's out there. And it is amazing when people start leaning into those universal behaviors, how that can show up, and they can pivot to different roles, and they can thrive in different roles without necessarily knowing the direct skills. Leadership shows up in a big way. Let's get to this question too, kind of self-assessment in the void, I
Yeah,
might
I
call
was
it.
just looking at that one.
I think that's a good one. In the absence of feedback, how do leaders accurately assess their own performance and development needs? If let's say I've asked all the right questions, I've tried to get the feedback, I'm still not receiving it the way I want. Is there still a way for me to self-assess, perhaps?
Well, even if you're not getting that kind of feedback in the workplace, there's got to be somewhere you can get that kind of feedback.
I love that. I love that.
And I mean, we like to say that how you do anything is how you do everything.
Mhm.
So if you have blind spots, if you have things that are gaps, we all have flat spots, we all have gaps, we all have blind spots.
Mhm.
It's likely that those are showing up at home or in the community or wherever you show up, just as they are at work. So there's an opportunity there. There's an opportunity, but again, don't corner your spouse or your best friend and say, "Hey, give me some feedback." Say, "I've got some real concerns. I'm trying to close some gaps. Here's what I think the gaps are based on what you know about me. What do you think?"
Hmm. That's good.
By the
Uh,
way, kids are also can be kids of a certain age, kids that are still perhaps more on the blunt side before they turn 12, 13, 14,
mhm.
can be wonderful sources of feedback.
Yeah.
And you
Are
could
you
you could go to
speaking?
them with a simple exercise that says, "Hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how am I doing as your dad?"
Yeah.
Like that takes a little bit of courage, by the way.
Yeah.
But then the more important question is, no matter what number they give you, "Oh, I'm a 6, for crying out loud. Do they know how hard I work for them?" Ignore that. Smile and say, "Thank you very much. What one thing could I do to get from a 6 to a 7?"
Yeah. Yeah. Are
That's
you
a simple.
speaking? Are you speaking hypothetically from your fifth child's perspective, Jeff?
Yeah. Yeah. But that's a simple
Um,
framework.
yeah.
I'm working on X, or how am I doing as your manager? How am I doing as your direct report?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you for that number. I appreciate it. What I'm really looking for is, how do I get from a 7 to an 8? What
Yeah.
one thing could I do more of in the future that would be helpful?
Yeah. I
You
love
got to
that.
give people a framework. You got to simplify it. You got to be um, clear on
Yeah.
what you're asking for, as opposed to, "Hey, Wes, give me a little feedback."
Yeah. And at times, just like we've been doing on these webinars at the beginning, if you can orchestrate some type of frame or spectrum, on this end is this over here, on this end it's this over here. Where do you see us playing, or where do you see me? Within that, that really gives people that ability, and I think you would know better, but pushes them into that more utility
Mm.
bucket of
That's right. Well,
feedback if you
that's
present
what
it
the
there.
second question is all about. What thing can I do
Mhm.
to get from a 6 to a 7?
Yeah. Yeah.
What would be
That's
helpful for
good.
you?
So,
There's feedback embedded in that response.
yeah, yeah. We still have a little bit of time. If anybody has any particular thing we've spoken about, it's crazy. We only have 4 minutes left. This has gone by quick. If you have any particular questions or any particular things you heard John say that you'd love us to dig into at the end, we're happy to do that. Just another quick example that comes to mind. I was being coached by one of our partners recently without knowing I was being coached, which I think happens quite often. And usually I can pick up on it pretty quick, but this individual was asking me all kinds of questions about my personal stuff and what was going on and what I was doing about it. And I thought we were just shooting the breeze. And then the end, he turns to me, he goes, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And was literally doing exactly what you said, John,
Yeah.
bringing up, affording me ways to basically self-assess how I was
Yeah.
doing and how I was developing, right?
Yeah. That's,
And I got a
that's,
little bit frustrated and mad at first, but then realized this was an incredible feedback session.
well, that's the thing. I wish I could articulate this better, but let me try to give some examples. The point is that there is feedback all around us.
Hmm.
Like when you're in front of a group and when you're talking, what kind of reactions are you getting? What kind of
Hmm.
questions are you getting? When you're at the store with the kids, what kind of feedback are you getting in terms of their behavior? There's all kinds of situations where the world is a feedback rich environment, but we're not always
Yeah.
tuned into it because we're so focused on getting things done, taking care of others, etc.
Yeah. And in the same vein, we say this a lot too. When you get the feedback, if you need to practice it or whatever new behavior you're trying to integrate based on that high utility feedback, find those lower risk places to do that first, whether that be personal or professional.
Yeah.
Don't just wait until the next time where that supervisor, that leader told you this is where it showed up, and so you're just waiting to do it then. Practice it somewhere else. I
So
mean, the balance of that I think is so rich when it's related to feedback.
this may be helpful to folks on the call. Let's say you don't really know where you stand with your leader. Let's say that your leader is pretty stingy. Uh, if and when they provide feedback, it's vague and not terribly useful. Well, one way to figure out where you stand is to pick a Goldilocks type of issue, something
Hmm.
that's not too hot, not too
Hmm.
cold, and just make a decision and go with it. And then tell them, or at at the very least say, "Hey, this is what I intend to do on this particular issue. Stop me if you think I'm wrong." If you
Yeah.
get a big stop sign, you know where you stand. There's some
Yeah.
feedback in there.
Yeah.
If they let you run, there's some great feedback in there as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
one way to figure out, in the absence of feedback, that's one way to figure out where you stand with your manager.
Yeah, and sometimes we think that feedback is just leader to person that person is leading, right? It's just from one person to another. And in the absence of feedback, I love that concept of you got to take a step back and realize, okay, where is the feedback then? Where
Yeah.
do I find the feedback? Because it's somewhere. That's really rich. So we never have time to get to everybody's questions or comments or thoughts or anything like that. So Sophie's going to drop in the chat box if you want to schedule a quick 10-minute session with one of our coaches. We'd love to hear a little bit more about your particular context and give you some feedback advice on exactly what you can do there. And then also, crazy enough, we're going to be in Charlotte tomorrow, Charlotte, North Carolina. Our other coach, Mallory Stacy, is going to be leading a session on feedback for about 60 senior leaders in the Charlotte area on location. We're going to be in Boston and in November, and so would love for Sophie to drop that in the chat box as well. So Sophie, if you could drop the Boston that's coming up, we're already full up for Charlotte tomorrow. Just lots of opportunities, and then overall, you can always find events on our page and things to engage with us as well. Appreciate everybody showing up live today. John, any closing thoughts, remarks, encouragement notes for the leaders on the call today or listening into the recording at a later date?
No, beyond thank you all for joining us. We appreciate your time. We appreciate you being here live. I would just remind you that feedback is all around you. Are you listening? Are you open?
I love that. And I don't know if you will leave the chat box open here for just a bit so you can grab those links. I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear this, perhaps. Let's see. But wanted to go out with the pride of the Southland.
All right, I'm out.
Marching band. John.
Thank you, Wes.
Good old Rocky Top. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the day. Cheers.